is being, is being recorded. You're welcome to use your video so you can see others, but it's not a requirement. If you're not talking, please just mute your computer or mute your device, whatever you're on, just to keep some of that background. But obviously during this presentation, we want you to ask questions, and so just interrupt, chime in, however that works is fine. You're welcome to put your questions in the chat box too, or comments. Kathy's going to watch that for us too, so we appreciate that. After the presentation, if you do want a copy of our PowerPoint, make sure it's in your emails in the chat box. Unless you've registered with us, then we have that. So that is kind of some housekeeping. Kathy, did you want to chime in for youth mentoring and do a spiel?
I can spiel if you want me to spiel.
You can spiel a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are very lucky here at Helping Services that we have youth mentoring, and we've been doing it in Almaquis, Howard, and Winneshiek counties for over 20 years. And in Delaware, they've been doing it a long time, but not always under Helping Services. Under Helping Services, it's been at least 10 and I think close to 15 years. So that's very exciting. And we serve children between the ages of 6 and 16. And I think this photo is of a pair that are in Delaware County that are either after school or meet during the school day type of thing. And it looks like they did some really handy artwork that I see. And one of the things that we really like to do with mentoring is to be there for that youth, so that when there are risky opportunities that they could take part in, that mentors have that role of advising, listening, being there for the youth. And we're so very happy that so many mentors are on the call tonight. We really, really appreciate that. And one of our things we need to do with mentoring is do these trainings so that mentors can feel equipped, but we broaden that so that community members and parents and all of you guys can know great information too. So we're really pleased that you're all here. And we're very pleased that with all of the matches that Colleen and Sam and I have, there's about 62 matches. So that's really exciting to have that many. You double that and add a few more, because we've got some couples and some families that do mentoring. There's a lot of people involved in making a difference in youth lives. So that's my spiel.
Thank you. That's a good one. Okay, so let's dive right in. What brings you here tonight is the discussion on gambling. So what is it? The definition, according to our state code, section 725.7, is participating in a game for any sum of money or other property of value, or making a bet. And if you break that down into parts, it kind of looks like if you're betting on anything that has value, there's a chance to win something and or a risk or uncertain outcome. So that's kind of just the broadest definition there is. But we're going to dive more into that and give examples of what that looks like, so you can get kind of a better understanding of that. So just to tell you, gambling's been here forever. This is not a new concept. This didn't come when the first casino was built. Goes all the way back to the 3rd century is, I think, the earliest that we know about. And it's the knucklebone dice, which is on your right-hand side of your screen, that were found in Egypt. So it's been around forever. It's not a new subject. It's a new subject in the sense that we need to talk about it, because it affects people's lives, and we're finding that there's a problem gambling disorder, which we will talk about too. Jenny, I don't know if you want to speak to it, but Jenny was just on in a training that talked about that there was problem gambling even way back further than that we know.
Yeah, they really didn't dive into too much depth on it, but now they know that even back when gambling came around, back in this 3rd century, there's evidence that there was problem gambling way back then. So I don't know how they know that, but they know that since it's been around, it's had people that have, had troubles with addiction to it. So that's very interesting.
So throughout the presentation, we want to keep you involved. So in the chat box or unmute yourself, whatever you'd like to do. This is a myth or fact. Let us know what you think. Casinos loosen the slot machines at the entrance to attract players. So loosen means that you're more likely to win. What do you guys think?
There's fact, true in the chat, myth, true, myth, yes, true. It sounds like more people think that that is true. I'm not sure. It was kind of maybe even.
Maybe even? Okay.
Oh,
It's a myth. So our modern day slot machines are state of the art equipment. And there's sophisticated computer chips that are programmed according to our state law. So as you're going to hear a bunch tonight, when you go to any of especially a casino, you are not set up to win. The casino is set up to win. So just know that. So that philosophy that, oh, they loosen them to get you in so that, we'll capture you. It's not true. And also that the idea that this machine is due to win is also, I hope that's not a question later on. We'll see who is listening if it is. But you're not due to win on any machine because it's a computerized attraction. So, and you're not set up to win. So just know that we're kind of trying to debunk some of those myths that if you play long enough or that sort of thing that you're bound to win. And that's not true. Jenny, do you need to add anything?
Nope.
Okay. So Iowa Lottery. So the Iowa Lottery came about back in '85. And it started off with 3 categories: the instant scratch, the pull tabs, and lotto games that we know today. In Iowa, we have about 2,400 retailers that sell lottery things. And that from its inception, we're in the billions when we're talking profit that we've made off of our lottery. Lotteries are the leading form of gambling still in the state of Iowa. As we talk about sports betting, since it's so new in Iowa, we're still waiting for a lot of results. There's a lot of anticipation of what stats and things like that are going to look like, that we're pretty sure we're going to surpass all numbers, basically, everything from money to problem gambling disorder because of sports betting. So you'll see this, but a lot of these stats so far haven't totally included all of our sports betting since it's so new. So that's just to kick us off. These are the types of legal gambling in Iowa. You guys can kind of read through them. I'll touch on a couple. Sports betting is one we're going to dive into today. Esports is new. That is where you play sports electronically. I think a lot of our colleges are starting to adopt esports. There was talk about Upper Iowa adopting something. And so that's going to be a new generation type of game, but it's also associated with gambling. The other one you see on here is stock market that maybe you didn't know. And we're learning a lot about this right now. And this has to do with day trading and stocks and commodity trading. And what they're finding out with that, why it's becoming a problem, is because people are getting in the habit of it's the anticipation or the romanticizing of the win versus winning the money. So for day trading, it's one of those you put up money, and by 6 o'clock tonight, I'm going to know if I won, right? And so it's a whole new take on gambling that we maybe haven't thought of, but it's definitely something to watch. This has attracted a lot of younger generations And so they're starting to see where that's coming into play when it comes to that type too. So, and all the others that people can be exposed to.
And Jen, there's a comment in the chat that says, a Luther intern said that gambling is very big on campus.
Ooh, and do you know what kind?
The esports online stuff.
Okay, yeah. And when we're talking about that in fantasy sports, you know, maybe you guys have heard of the fantasy sports but that's where, you know, you pick your team for March Madness or the Super Bowl, and, you know, you choose who the winner is. With this now too, it's so particular now, you can actually bet on what the next play is or what's going to happen on the next play. So it's not even picking what team's going to win the Super Bowl. It's now I don't want to drop any names here of whether it'll be the 49ers or who, but what that next play is going to be and whether so-and-so is going to get so many yards. That's at the tip of their hands on their phone, they're making those bets. So it's getting pretty serious when it comes to instant gratification. This just shows that we have 19 casinos in Iowa with 4 tribal. And so it's good to know where everything lies. I think this is a question coming up, but with the tribal gambling in Iowa, these 4 casinos have some different rules, and they're protected because that's such a big income source for our tribal friends. So this just shows that this is still a part of Iowa, along with the 19 other casinos that we have. So this is a look at what we have in Iowa. And I think the question, I might have taken it out. Can anyone guess how long, if you're in any part of the state of Iowa, how long does it take you to get to the nearest casino? Do you know how close access is for if you're in any part of Iowa?
An hour?
Okay. Anybody else?
I'd say 2 hours.
The hour answer is correct. So no matter where you are in Iowa, you could be in a casino within an hour. That's how prevalent it is. And I don't know that people always realize that we have that many casinos here, but that attributes to access for people, right? So not that everyone who gambles, it become a problem, but it's just showing that accessibility is definitely a concern for us here in Iowa. Jenny, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I just do know that some of these casinos with the addition of sports betting are really expanding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger attractions. And also a lot of these casinos are on the border of the state, and I don't know if anyone has a guess of why that would be.
I would say probably to attract people from out of state that maybe casinos aren't in their area.
Exactly, Cindy. Yes, that is correct. So definitely trying to bring in that revenue from those other states too.
So looking at our Iowa legislation, so back just recently in 2019, there were 11 fantasy sports and sports wagering bills introduced to our legislation. And come that June, it got passed. So at the time we adopted sports betting in Iowa. At the time, in order to participate in that, you had to go to a casino to register and sign up for your sports betting platform. And then you could go about your business to set up your account, and then you were able to use that option. So people had to make an effort to go. And then not even 2 years later, Iowa passed, you no longer had to do that. You could do it. The in-person registration was no longer needed. You simply could do it on your phone. And if that didn't change accessibility and the concern for problem gambling, nothing will. So those, with this being such a new law in 2001, we're still unfortunately waiting to see the effects of what that's going to bring to Iowa here. So looking at sports betting, Jenny, did you want to add anything to that quick? Okay, sorry. So
No,
looking,
my internet connection's just unstable. It keeps
Oh,
saying
okay.
so sorry.
gotcha. So this is the latest report, which is our legal sports report for Iowa, and this is 2022, so not too far off. So we're pretty good. But this is what the attraction is. If you look as of January 10th of this year, Iowa topped at $5 billion in money that was handled. And you'll hear me say the word handled. That means what was brought in. So that's just the lingo that they used. And that was after them reporting $230 million in bets from Iowans in December alone.
Wow.
And it's one of those concepts that's ridiculously hard to even fathom, right? Because you have to think that's not across our nation, or that's not New York City, that's Iowa. So Iowa Sportsbooks reported $247.5 million in November. And you can kind of read through these. They took a big drop in October, which was funny to read that. And then, yeah, it's quadrupling what they thought it would. And that's where the attraction is. You know, our legislators and people see this. They see the money that it's bringing in and the taxes they're getting to collect from that. But not, again, just like with really anything we're trying to prevent substance use or whatever we're trying to prevent, there's the money, the greed and the money component that we have to fight against, right? They're not looking at what that means for how much people are needing to spend on treatment, or how much money is being lost out of retirement accounts, or, houses that are having to be mortgaged, or, that dollar amount either. So this is the attraction when we talk about sports betting. This is why it's happened. For those who don't know, these are our top 3 sports betting apps, DraftKings. And if you watch any sort of television, you see these advertisements. When we first passed this law, you couldn't watch anything without seeing this being marketed. But these are the 3 top ones that are used in Iowa. And of course, they want to get their customers, right? So all of them have some sort of free betting money. So if you download the DraftKings app right now, $50 free bet plus 20% up to $1,000 on your first deposit. So they're trying to reel you in with, here's a little money we'll give you, and then they hope you stick with it and become a customer, right? And so that too is the attraction. We've heard, Jenny and I have heard some of even our colleagues, or was it? No, it was John's. I think John's son said something like, "Oh, let's bet. Like, there's $50 free." Is on something he was watching as a kid.
Oh, wow.
And they don't understand what that means, of course. But I'm sure DraftKings, Caesars, MGM, all of them have a very solid marketing plan put in place, right? Their commercials, they're using obviously celebrities to attract people, making it very attractive for anyone who's really in that sports world or in the playing cards or gambling world, making it look really, really attractive. Any questions on that?
Were numbers higher during the pandemic when people were at home?
So it was new coming off, like that June of 2019. It skyrocketed then anyway, and the numbers just kept on increasing up to what we're at now. So yeah, I'm sure it helped us launch those numbers during the pandemic. Those are all things we're still waiting for, Colleen, too, kind of in every area, substance use too. We're seeing what really the pandemic sparked. But I'm sure there's those people who maybe wouldn't have touched it, but due to the pandemic, and this is a maybe, you know, I have no research on that, but who maybe fell into it because of the pandemic. They didn't have anything better to do, so therefore they tapped into this, where if they would have been working their 40 hours or whatever, they might not have. So
Okay, I was just gonna say, during the pandemic in 2020, when it started, sports betting was so new, and the casinos had actually shut down for quite a while. And so they did end up probably pretty much breaking even that year with everything, because they were actually shut down for so long. And that was when you still had to go in person to register. So I think it probably could add to that addiction, but there was so much of that online illegal gambling at that time too, that we don't know. We won't have those numbers. We won't get those numbers. So that's a hard one to judge, but it definitely affects where we go from here.
thanks for that clarification, Jenny. I appreciate that. Anybody else have a question?
And I was just gonna ask, what kind of, are there any kind of regulations that you guys are aware of that these big, you know, DraftKings and Caesars and BetMGM have to follow to curtail people from, you know, problem gambling?
No, you have to be 21 and be 21. Jenny, do you know of any other regulation?
No regulations that I know of. The only thing is they're going to do the things like Budweiser did with safe drinking, to help combat that they are doing the right thing, or, you know, they're trying to do the right thing, but they're still making so much money that they're going to put a little bit towards that prevention, but no regulations that I know of.
Good question. So this just kind of breaks down by definition some of the terms we've been using. And when it comes to our youth, or, you know, people who work with youth or parents on the call, gaming comes up, of course. So gaming is any type of game that includes, that's played on a mobile device, gaming console, you know, whatever that looks like. So that's the term gaming. Fantasy sports. So this is what I mentioned. This is where you're going to maybe pick a team or pick a player specifically, and you're going to follow them for like a whole season or at least a tournament. And then breaking that down into daily fantasy sports, it's a short period of time. So it's a single day competition. So that's a one game versus looking at a whole season. So, and that's all evolved. That's saying, I don't want to wait a whole season before I try and win money. I want that instant gratification, and I want to see how this game's going to turn out. So that's kind of just some of those definitions. When you hear those, it's how it's broke down. So do Iowans gamble? Yes. They do. And not that it's all bad. Like, so Jenny just kind of mentioned this. We'll talk about this at the end too. Gambling can be a form of entertainment for some, and not become a problem. There's regulations for being a responsible gambler. But the thing that we don't know is what someone might be going through that they could potentially trigger them, and maybe it starts off innocently, and then it can lead to a disorder. That's what we don't know, and no one really knows that, right? So about 14% of adult Iowans will experience a problem with gambling. So that's a pretty big number. And we know that it affects, yes, the gambler, but we also know it affects our family and our friends. It affects our work life for people who develop that disorder. So that's important to be looking at. We're talking 1 in 5 have negative effects of some sort, that gamble. And then on our local survey, about 50% of adults in Northeast Iowa responded to a local survey saying they felt gambling was either somewhat of a problem or a large problem in our community. So, and that's their perception. You know, everybody has a perception of what gambling is. Some people think it's a casino. If you're gambling, you're at a casino. Some think, yep, I'm playing poker with my buddies. You know, some are thinking sports betting now. Some are fantasy sports. So that whole list that you saw, everyone's perception of what gambling entails helps what answers those questions. So we've thrown out the word problem gambling quite a bit tonight. So let's talk about that. So this is when the behavior becomes an issue. That behavior pattern is compromised, disruptive, it damages your relationships and in your career path, basically. It's a complex condition that we have to look at several of the consequences and components of it. It can obviously affect your finances, right? So an individual who is going beyond their means, well, that's already a check mark, right? There's some sort of spiritual or psychological component. We know that people who do have problem gambling disorder often check the co-occurring mental health box as well, along with substance use. So there's a lot of components there. Social component, we're looking at your isolation and withdrawal. A lot of people, it's often called the hidden addiction because it's not a problem until it is what it comes down to, or people find out that it can be a problem for people. Family, obviously, if someone's off gambling, there's maybe some neglect, and then all the consequences that come with those emotions of potentially losing. That's where abuse can come in, and divorce, and so it's a big overall issue when it comes to that. If you're skipping work or not being able to go to work because you have to go and gamble, or maybe you're at your desk and you have your phone and you're having to gamble during the day, that's where it also becomes a concern. And just like any other disorder, it's not just your mental health or the habit. It can then start affecting your physical health, because that's a lot of pressure on your body. And of course, then legal issues. If anyone goes that far to where not only maybe are they bankrupting themselves or pulling out of their retirement fund, but if there's some sort of access to other income, someone with a disorder could take it that step further and look at your fraud and embezzlement.
And in addition to that, I don't think this is a slide later, so I'll mention it.
Okay.
But the suicidality of problem gamblers is actually higher than any substance use disorder that we know of. So people that have issues with gambling are actually more likely to contemplate suicide, but actually also go through with it. So it's the highest amount of suicides, higher than any sort of substance use disorder or anything like that. So definitely something you'd want to remember, that there's definitely ask those questions. You know, are you thinking of killing yourself, or when people are struggling with gambling addiction?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thanks for sharing that. So what classifies as a gambling disorder? So a gambling disorder is now in the DSM-5. So that's our book that determines what's a disorder and what's not in the medical field. So having a gambling disorder is a legit thing. It's one of those things that one, we don't hear about as much, or two, we might have that stigma attached to it that, you know, tell them to quit, or, you know, quit being an idiot, or, you know, that type of mentality wrapped around it. But it's just like being diagnosed with diabetes, or, a substance use disorder or whatever other illness that a person can endure. It's the same thing. And we'll look at some brain scans here coming up, but just so you know, it is considered a disorder. This next little piece is you have to have four or more of these things that are listed in order to be diagnosed with a gambling disorder. So you can kind of read through them, but it's the not being able to quit. You can't cut back, or it changes your mood, you're lying, you're missing work. Any of that combination could get you that diagnosis. So looking at these brain scans. So this is on the left is someone who is gambling in the moment. And the one on the right is someone who's using an addictive substance. So this is our research that shows that it triggers the same part of our brain, right? We know that when a substance is used or gambling, we know that dopamine is released and that feel good. I want that more and more and more, right? So these scans show how closely they are related to each other. And what we've learned through substance use is doesn't always have to be in the moment of when you're using, or when you're at that slot machine maybe, or you just bet on a horse race or whatever it might be. It's the anticipation of leading up to it that can start to release these chemicals in our brain. And that's what makes it hard to stop, right? Because our brain is saying, give me that, I need that, give me that. And that's the definition of addiction, right? So this is just that scientific proof. It's on the same part of the brain, and it stimulates the same part as if someone was using heroin or any other addictive drug. Okay. One of those that's nice to have that, just so people start to understand and get rid of that stigma attached to it. That it's really a serious disorder that we do have to give attention to and help those individuals who are struggling, and or hopefully preventing them from starting in the first place. So here's another myth and fact, just to break it up here. So video poker machines have different payouts for the same hand. Different payouts for the same hand.
There's a yes, there's a myth, another myth, true.
Well, those who said true,
So
right,
some-
fact.
Oh,
Sorry, I moved on.
that.
So yeah, again, going back to what we mentioned at the beginning is these machines are sophisticated things, machinery that are ran by a, that special computer chip that they make for these kind of machines. So yeah, this is one that's true, that, you get a royal flush and I get a royal flush, we might not get the same reward. So again, the casino is planning to win, is what it comes down to. Just remember that. Okay. Okay. So who's at risk? So taking a look at who, not that everyone's not at risk for something, and some might not even know this would be a risk of theirs, but what we do know is people with mental health disorder. So whether individuals who have some sort of personality disorder or substance use disorder, some depression and anxiety, it's their outlet, they're coping. Compulsive gambling can really tie into that. So we know that. Age and sex. So we know that the younger and middle-aged age group is the higher risk. But we also do know that we have an older generation too, who have fallen into the disorder definition as well. But as of now, the young to middle aged is our age group. We know that males have a higher rate than women. Athletes are 4 times higher than anybody else to develop a disorder. If you have friends and family who also gamble, that increases your risk, of course, because due to exposure. Medication, this is associated with a Parkinson's disease medication. They have found that, and a restless leg syndrome, sorry. It's a dopamine antagonist that triggers like those brain scans. That medication can trigger that part of the dopamine part in our brain, or release the dopamine on our brain. So that can also be a trigger. And then certain personality types. So if you're competitive, or a workaholic or impulsive, gambling can also be associated, that could really put you at risk for liking gambling. Okay. We do know that 75% of college students gambled during the past year, whether it was legally or illegally, and about 18% of those gambled weekly or more frequently. So our Luther intern who's on, that kind of matches what you were mentioning. So it's definitely a form of entertainment for our college population. Like I mentioned too, does that mean everyone's going to develop a disorder? No, but it definitely can put them on that path. So who's at risk for sports betting? What we know for this is we know that sports bettors are more likely to be male. Almost half are in that 18 to 34 year range. Iowans who already bet on sports are twice as likely to develop a gambling problem than those who don't bet on sports. That's one of the biggest outlets there is our sports world, and getting involved in that world. And then many sports bettors, 60%, have a college or bachelor's degree. And more than half of those have a household income of 75,000 plus. So this kind of does show, I mean, obviously gambling, just like any other disorder, doesn't discriminate against any one demographic. Everybody is at risk, right? It doesn't mean you're exempt because X, Y, Z. That isn't the case. We know that. But this is just some of the research that has come out that shows this demographic is at a higher risk for developing a disorder due to their love of sports. Okay, so what can you look for? This is always important just to have this in the back of your mind, whether you're a mentor, a parent, a community member, we all have friends and family. So recognizing whether someone's preoccupied with gambling, and that can be maybe if you're with them and they're on their phone all the time, or and they're betting on their phone, that type of thing, or they're gone at the casino, or they're always playing poker somewhere. That preoccupation is a sign to trigger your concern. They need to increase the amount of money. So the wages keep getting bigger and bigger. Trying to control, cut back, or stop, and you can't. That's when you're crossing over from being a responsible gambler to toying with the idea of addiction. Feeling restless or irritable when trying to cut down. And that's where that emotional mental health comes into play. And we'll talk about what those definitions look like too, of if you're chasing a bet or if you're chasing money in order to put it back in the checking account or put it back in your retirement, or what that looks like. That can take a huge toll on people. Or gambling to escape problems and feelings. So people use it just like they use substances. It's a coping mechanism. Maybe in the moment it's making them feel good. It's making them take their minds off of whatever is happening in their life, right? So those are, if you see any of those things in someone that you should have your radar up and be having those conversations with people. More, I mentioned the chasing the losses. That's a huge, if you think, oh, I got to go back and win in order to recoup whatever I just spent, that's a huge concern. Because like I already mentioned, if you're at a casino or even sports betting, it's all set up the same. You're not intended to be the winner. So that's called you're chasing your losses. Lying to family and friends, jeopardizing your relationships, your job, all because of gambling, committing illegal acts. We mentioned that, and asking others for money. And that's again, in order so you can go gamble and attempt to win back probably the funds that you have lost. So this is extreme. This is, if you see a couple of these, that's the time to start intervening and having those conversations and potentially getting people to seek some help before you have this whole list. And people with disorders often have this whole list. So family and friends, what do you see? So if you see, whether it's a spouse or whatever, unexplained financial problems, maybe they're starting to not be involved socially. They want to do that isolation. Emotional concerns. Jenny talked about this, about suicide rates increasing among problem gamblers. Like I mentioned, it's a lot of weight on their shoulders, and it's an anxiety they can't escape, right? They shut down communicating. You may notice that some items are missing, and that can be that they took them to the pawn shop to get money to go, wherever. Working overtime or taking on a second job, again, for the money, or absent or disinterested in family activities. So just like some other disorders, when they start separating themselves from what their daily activities would be or their normal habits, again, that's definitely a red flag for you. Jenny, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I think that these signs and symptoms are great to know, but also the way that gambling is moving towards being on our phones. Also, it's so much harder to know when people are starting to have a problem until it gets to that point where you're in all this debt and there's all these other issues, because people are doing it on their phones, and they can do it at work, and they can do it in their car. So taking note of that a lot of it can just be anywhere that person is. You might not know that they're not going to the casino. They're doing it on their phone. So just something to be aware of.
Yes, very good point. Definitely makes the hidden addiction an even stronger sell, because you're right. So to talk about the stigma attached to it though too, gambling is not a moral weakness. You guys saw the brain scans. It's a disorder, just like other things we have talked about. So we do have to get away from kind of like our opioid campaigns and see the person, not the addiction. We have to get past that it's immoral, they're weak, or that they don't have any self-control, or they're bad people. They've fallen into an addiction, and that's what it is. So just something also to be mindful of as whether you have conversations with people or a family or friends struggle with it, that type of thing. We do need to keep this compassion at the forefront as well. Myth or fact, before you play any game, you should invest in a book that tells you how to beat the odds.
I think I heard some laughing on that one.
Yeah, you did. What do we think? Myth or fact?
Somebody says myth in the chat. Another myth. Myth. 2 myths. And no, lots of myths.
Lots of myths. Okay.
Creative spelling on myths. It's hard to spell.
Yeah. You're right. Myth. So understanding a game or the odds can help you play smarter. So if you know how to play poker, you can play smarter. And there are some strategies attached to some games. But anything that is a game of chance is just that. There's no way to beat chance. It's pure luck is what it comes down to. So yes, if there's games that have strategies and that type of thing, you can learn all the strategies you want, but still there's 52 cards in a deck. There's so many dots on a dice. It's still a game of chance, regardless of what regardless of what you're playing. So unless you're cheating somehow, no one can beat a game of chance in the long run. So taking a peek at our youth, being as all of us probably on this call somehow work with youth in some capacity, parents, mentors. So looking at the risk factors, our young men are, again, at a higher rate than our females, single parent households, already engaging in alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use, parental or family gambling. So if it's demonstrated to them or they're being exposed, academic problems, that can be because they're then turning to some sort of gaming or gambling as a coping strategy, or it's something that they're good at versus math, maybe. Impulsivity, we talked about what those character traits are. If you're impulsive and workaholic, that type of thing, that's a very a personality trait that the gambling industry loves. Having ADHD, trauma, or other mental health issues, same with our adults. It can be a coping mechanism and or a relief from other everyday stressors, and early onset of gambling. So all of these factor into potentially developing a gambling disorder, puts them at higher risk. In my photo here says it starts with games. So let's talk about that. So when we talk about kids gaming, some of the games that kids play by definition are gambling. So if you look at Minecraft or Clash of Clans or some of those games, even Candy Crush, for those who might even be playing Candy Crush, you are paying money to get something that you don't know what you might be getting in return. In some of the kids' games, those are called like loot boxes and things like that. So they're paying money in order to get maybe a new weapon or a new outfit or something like that. But when they're paying that, they don't know what they're paying for. So therefore, it goes into that definition of gambling because it's the uncertainty of what they're getting. So that, first of all, is exposure, right? They're starting at a very young age to do that. And if they continue to do that, then we're looking at building that risk. As you know, the younger we start, the more likely we are to develop a disorder. So what gaming and gambling is doing for our child, along with many other things in our world, is giving them that immediate gratification, which is a concern, right? They want the result now. So therefore I'm going to pay. Instead of back in my day in Pac-Man, you had to earn your way through the levels, right? Now you can pay and get an instant gratification instead, that type of thing. So it's teaching them that behavior. Jenny, I see you're unmuted. Do you want to jump in?
Well, this question has come up before. So, kids are asking, I have an 8-year-old son, he's asking he wants Robux and which is a game, he wants money to buy his character new outfit. Is that gambling? And he wants money to buy his character new tools. And so when you're doing that, you do know what you're getting. So technically it's not gambling. It's the gaming. And that is the generation, that is what the kids are doing. And so I don't think nobody should feel bad if they're getting their child Robux or anything like that. Because it's not necessarily gambling. It is part of that whole gaming world that our children are living in. So that is different than buying the loot boxes or doing those online gambling. It is a little different because you do know what you're buying.
Yes, very good explanation. And it does come down to what Jenny said. It's the world that they live in. And so we have to know as parents or as mentors or grandparents or whoever, just to stay in tune with what that looks like too. Because as they get older, even into the teenage years, if they've been gaming for 10 years or whatever that might look like, they might even be ready to move on to some of that more risky behavior because that's their world. They've done what they've done at this level, and now it's time to move forward with that. So it's all the exposure, all the things that the game intends them to experience. We have to be concerned with and be involved, I guess, be more involved in what they're doing. If all of a sudden you see a big charge on your card, yeah, did they buy the new outfit for their character or did they just place a bet on something or that type of thing? So just the overall message here is our kids are being exposed. They're very much the target. We want to start them young so that they become our clients in the future. So being aware of that is super important.
Internet safety next month.
Internet safety next month, yes. Okay.
Actually, internet safety's in 2 months. Next month
2
is
months.
how to talk to your child. about difficult topics.
Good job, Kathy.
Sorry.
Okay, so responsible gaming. We've mentioned this, that people can enjoy gambling without it becoming an issue. And that's okay. People just have to be mindful of where they take it, right? So social gamblers participate in gambling in a responsible manner without experiencing any of those negative effects. So it's when they start to cross those lines that we mentioned in the signs and symptoms that they're toying with increasing their risk. But playing some cards, maybe making a few, whether it's M&Ms or that type of thing, it's not going to create a problem gambling disorder for most. So there is that, just like responsible drinking or that there's place for it in responsible gambling and gaming.
And a real quick question in the chat, is auctioning a form of gambling?
I suppose, yeah. Jenny, I don't know if you want to chime in here. I suppose I've been to auctions where you bet on a box of stuff so you don't know what you're getting.
That would be.
So that would be,
That would
yeah. But most of the time at an auction though, too, you know what you're betting on. It'd be if there was an unknown in your purchase. Would it fall under that?
And I need to hop off because I've got another obligation. So maybe somebody else can watch the chat.
Okay. I didn't even
I
pay
can.
attention to the time. So yeah, responsible gambling is what we talked about. It's not borrowing money from your future paychecks or credit cards. It's not causing any problems at home. You're staying within all of those limits that we talked about. This again is that low risk. So when you go in or wherever you're going to gamble, treat your money like you're going to the movies. So if I'm going to go to movies and a dinner, I'm going to say I'm going to spend $50. Well, if I'm going to go to a casino, that's still my entertainment allowance. Keep that. Any winnings, keep them. Don't put them back in the machine or re-up them. Set your limits, gamble for a certain amount of time. Don't go if you're experiencing any sort of emotion. Don't go by yourself. And don't use it as an alternative to feeling better. Because whatever that feeling you have is going to be there when you're done too. and potentially worse. So Iowa does have what's called the self-exclusion program. We've found many hiccups in this. Jenny, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about it. You're good at this.
Yeah, I know we don't have much time, so
Yes, sir.
The self-exclusion programs have a lot of flaws in them just because you are still able to go gamble when you self-exclude yourself. There are 2 self-exclusion programs in Iowa. You can self-exclude from the Iowa lottery, and you can also self-exclude yourself from the casinos. Both of them are very flawed because you are still able to go do those things until you win a jackpot above a certain amount. And then you're going to be flagged that you are self-excluded. So it's great. It's a great tool, but it's not going to fix everything right now. So people are still able to go in casinos. They are technically trespassing if they do so, if they're self-excluded, but the casino does not necessarily know that until they win a jackpot. So there's a lot of room to make progress in that area, but that is the way it is right now.
Thank you. So your role, we kind of talked about this, watch for signs and symptoms. Just you being here tonight, it creates that awareness. Realize that it very much in today's world can be a hidden illness that we can't smell it, we can't see it, that type of thing. So just being mindful and having some knowledge of it is great. It's a great way to create awareness on the issue, but also have that tool in your back pocket if needed. We do have local help for problem gambling down in Delaware County. ASAC, Area Substance Abuse Council, is the problem gambling treatment provider. And up in Northeast Iowa is Behavioral Health. They also have problem gambling treatment options for both the gambler and the family. So that is a nice service that they offer. Of course, you can always go to Your Life Iowa, and you can call, text, chat with anyone there. They can meet you where you're at and help you through that process. And of course, 1-800-BETS-OFF, which we've all heard for many, many years, is definitely the go-to. And this can be you calling on behalf of someone, but also the gambler using this outlet as well. Evaluation. I bet we didn't put that in the chat yet. So we do have an evaluation. We should ask Kathy to do that quick. We'll get that thrown in the chat quick. Just a shout out to Kathy and Sam. They do need to spread the word on Your Life Iowa as a resource. So if any of your groups that you belong to, or just a friend group, anyone wants to hear more about that resource, covers everything from substance use to mental health to problem gambling. It's kind of a one-stop shop. They're welcome to give a presentation or a little lunch and learn type of scenario if you would like to learn more. Okay, I'm going to stop my share if that's okay. And then I'll go grab.
I actually don't have the evaluation.
I
So
think
Colleen, you have it. If you could put it in the chat.
I don't know. She popped off and then popped back on.
I'm here, but I don't have it.
I do. Just hold
But
2 seconds. If
you
everybody,
have it?
we can
Otherwise-
send it
Alright.
out too.
We have everybody's email that's on. There's not
Okay,
a
let's
single
do that.
here that we don't have the email of. I recognize every single name. We can send it via email and just get it out to you guys.
Okay, let's do it that way and then people can get off. We took you 5 minutes over, sorry. Does anyone have any ending questions or any thoughts or anything you want to chat with?
Does anyone want to guess what the #1 game played worldwide is?
Poker, we got a
Poker, Brittany guessed. No, not poker. It's the lottery. It's the most played game worldwide.
makes sense.
It's
Like
a really high-
scratch off,
it's
are
really-
you talking, or you just like guessing numbers?
Yep, get a lot. Yeah, guessing numbers. I guess the lottery is the most played game worldwide.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing. Good tidbit to end
It's
on.
crazy, huh?
Thanks, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to email us, or if anything comes up, we're happy to get you any further resources that you might need, but we appreciate your time. Thanks for joining.